Hi, just trying this for the second time. My name is Ross Donlon. I'm doing this from Castlemaine, Central Victoria in Australia. Thanks, Hugh, for the opportunity to read a couple of poems at this strange time. Hugh asked me to read a couple of poems about my father. Seems like we've got something in common there. I'm not exactly sure what. My father was an American serviceman who came out to Australia during the Second World War and met and married my mother, both quite young. And he spent some time in Papua in Milne Bay, where oddly enough I ended up myself in my late teens and early 20s, and returned to Australia before having to go back to the States to be discharged in 1945, I guess. But what they'd planned is a little bit blurry about whether she was going to go over to join him in the States as a so-called war bride. I think maybe that was a plan, but she got cold feet. And then the plan was that he would return to Australia. He did leave his home in Louisville, Kentucky. This is him, Bill Donlon, I think on the last day before he left Louisville to go to San Francisco. And that's not me there, that's his niece and nephew. Because he and I never met. My mother was pregnant with me when he left for the States, and I was born in the September of 45. I think he died in about 51, I think. So he died in San Francisco. He's 34 years old. He died of cirrhosis of the liver in the Ferry Hotel on the Embarcadero on San Francisco waterfront, waiting and trying to get ships back to Australia. So it has shades of Madame Butterfly with a twist, I guess. He never did come back. And whether it was alcoholism or whether it was also, could have been a bug that he got in the tropics, that could be the case. But he apparently, when the body came back to Louisville, he was greatly changed. His hair had turned white. He's almost unrecognizable, I gather. So I'm going to read two poems. One's called Trawling in the Arctic. I've spent a lot of my life traveling, and I was in Iceland. I turned 21 in Seyðisfjord and did 3 trips working on a cod trawler out of Akureyri. And then my father comes into this poem, as you'll hear. It's called Trawling in the Arctic. Sometimes we trawled with the midnight sun, a gold bullet hole in the horizon. Sometimes in sleet, the cod masked in ice. Once we trawled in the tail of a cyclone, the stern under wash, the sea slashed black and white into spray. We got to the galley by counting waves, sliding and crashing across the deck. And I thought of the seafarer in the Old English poem, a peat bog man offshore in a storm, caught by cold, raw wind racking, ice biting, as he hunted for home. Still young, I watched a coast creep by while the ship rode waves like a surfer, then rucked my oilskin around my ears and ran, regardless of wind, spray, and counting. At such times, looking out from my own tightrope, I trawl for my father in a Frisco dive, rain ramming, his walk home wet, lit only by neon, and nobody there. I reflect, like someone watching the sea, how he waited for ships in the Ferry Hotel, the irony tolling across the Pacific to a war wife and son in Sydney, one barely known, one never seen, as he buffeted life towards death. So I did the whole sequence of poems, including found things that I turned into poems, like the telegram about his death, coroner's report, and the scraps of letters and cards that he wrote. We're talking working people here on both sides of the Pacific. and he wasn't a writer. His mother said he never write unless he had anything good to say, but he never did have good news. The blue dressing gown won a prize for me in the UK. A Wenlock Festival prize, part of the Avon. And it's part of a sequence of 3 poems called Relics, one called Archives, one called The American's Wallet, and this one, The Blue Dressing Gown. So I'll close with this. And again, thanks, Hugh, for the opportunity. I was supposed to be reading at the Big Lit Festival in Scotland and then do a few gigs with Hugh, and hope that'll still happen when all this is over. The Blue Dressing Gown. It hung in my boy's wardrobe, an army regulation item no one could throw out. And it would be hard, wouldn't it, to discard the only thing left in something like the shape of him. It hung on a wire hanger, skeleton of his shoulder cutting across collarbone, the drape of it swinging side to side, if nudged into a shy dance or if asked up by a breeze. I used to wear it with no sense of feeling weird or spooky, alternating with a practical flannel. Yet at night, sometimes woke, frightened by its doorway shadow, a man hanging on the moon's hook. I never realised I'd outgrown him, walking tall through one summer while his shoulders rode my back. The tassels swung like incense as I walked in his shape, trying to sense the being inside him. Thank you. If anyone's interested, the Australian Broadcasting Commission in Australia, ABC, did a lovely program on Radio National where they had actors reading some of the poems and music, and you can still find it if you typed in The Blue Dressing Gown, Ross Donlon, Radio National, Poetica, if that's of interest to press the button. They did a beautiful job, about a 40-minute program. Okay, thanks again. I'll see if I can post this away this time.